Well, good afternoon, Your Worship, councillors and members of our Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee. Good afternoon and welcome to our the Air Quality Bylaw Review hearing. And of course, also we are being streamed live, so to those who are watching from afar, welcome, no mai haere mai. And of course, we have members of the public here as well who are, I think they're mostly submitters, who are going to be talking with us this afternoon. So good afternoon and welcome to you all. Are there any apologies, please? Thank you. Yes, Councillor Donaldson.
Apology from Councillor Maxwell, Madam Chair.
Councillor Maxwell, thank
Apology.
you. He's away for the afternoon for the hearing, is he? Thank
Apology
you.
from Mr. Berryman-Kemp. He has
Mr. Berryman-Kemp, thank you.
leave for family issues.
Thank you. May I have a mover and a seconder, please, that apologies be accepted? Thank you, Councillor Gould. Thank you, Councillor Bentley. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, thank you. Carried. So just remember, councillors, that we do have a full report coming to us in due course, that the submissions for the submissions on the air quality control bylaw review closed on the 30th of June, and so now we're just going to this afternoon listen to those who wanted to present at this hearings today, present and speak to their submission at the hearings this afternoon. So thank you. Please do remember to keep your microphone on if you are going to talk, so that everybody can hear, particularly those from afar. Thank you. Now, do I have a mover and a seconder, please, that the Air Quality Control Review, Bylaw Review be received? Thank you, Councillor Gould. Thank you, Your Worship. It's been moved and seconded that the report, Air Quality Control Bylaw Review, be received. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, thank you. Carried. So I'd ask Hannah and Tristan McDonald. Thank you, from Rotorua Well Drilling. Thank you. If you'd like to come up to the Kia ora kōrua, thank you for coming along this afternoon. And if there's a little button there, a little grey button on the microphone, if you could just use that, because we do have our proceedings this afternoon are being recorded. Thank you very much. You do have 10 minutes to speak to your submission. We have read the submissions, but if you want to highlight anything, or you can use your 10 minutes as you will, but you might like to leave a little time towards the end, if you wish, for some questions, but that's entirely up to you, but you do have 10 minutes. So thank you and welcome along this afternoon. Kia ora.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Your Worship and councillors. So we're here talking about the Air Quality Bylaw Review. So the idea that we've got could pretty much cut all fireplace emissions. So we're talking about geothermal district heating. So I'll take it you've read the proposal, so we're just going to leave it open for any questions anyone may have. Thank you very much.
Yes, Your Worship.
Thank you. Yes, there are a few. Councillor Kent. Oh, sorry, beg your pardon, Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for a very good submission, you two. I think it sort of demonstrates, from what I've found out, that you have many, many years of experience in your family with regard to this thing, this proposal you've got. Now, do you see any advantage to involving, say, Te Arawa in this plan?
Yes, in a culturally sensitive perspective, also in a land asset perspective as well.
An investment perspective also.
As a follow-up, have you discussed it with him, and what was their reaction?
We had a meeting with Ray Morrison this morning, and he was positive. He said that if council went for it, that he would be behind it.
Worship, thank you.
Thank you, and this is exciting, especially because you're backed by industry knowledge here. And in the past, we've always been told that there's a tipping point of affordability. To get reticulated geothermal heating, too expensive, so look at other alternative heating solutions. What's your belief about that concept that seems to me to be rather old-fashioned?
The technology we've got these days is easily capable of achieving this goal. 200 countries around the world already achieve this with a lesser resource than what we have access to. And there's cheap, not cheap, but affordable products on the market now for reticulation that lose less than 1 degree over per kilometre of piping, and the directional drilling technology allows this to be easy. And in my view, I see that if we can provide fibre optic internet to everyone's doorstep, then why can't we directional drill geothermal heating and hot water to every home?
And can I just ask a supplementary on that? Do you envisage in a district-wide heating scheme clusters from one bore, and do you think there'll be an issue with regional council about approval to draw on the resource?
Currently, the resource is allocated to private and commercial users. So the way we would approach it is that we would take the allocation of the private sector and divide that out between a number less than 10 individual systems. And instead of these systems currently doing 20 houses max or 30 houses at the most off one production system, we'd be doing about 2,000 homes off one by utilising a mass storage system. So the water that goes to the houses isn't geothermal water. It's been heat exchanged by steam, heated to 80 degrees and stored in a mass storage tank underground, and then distributed from that tank rather than drawing directly from a heat exchanger, which is the current system, which is only capable of doing 20 or 30 houses per system.
And does it re-inject?
Yep.
Yes.
Because that
Back
was
to
the
the
issue
same. Yep.
originally back with Pahutu and the closure to
Yep.
1 kilometre. We
Yep,
didn't
so
have the
every bore would
re-injection.
have a matching re-injection bore.
Thank you. That's heartening.
I just ask you, in relation to the closures in down by, obviously down by the field, Waka, whatever, the likelihood or the potential for that to be, well, what would you say, come back on stream? Have you looked at that really in any depth?
Are you talking about the...
The ones that were grouted
Um,
in the 20 years ago?
There's no need to go there. I believe it was a good choice that they made to establish that exclusion zone, and it has brought things back to life.
Yeah.
A lot of people are worried about, they think that we're going to come and drill them all over the place, but the fact of the matter is that we can reticulate up to about an 8-kilometre radius from each system, and Rotorua having a radius of around 12 to 15 kilometres. We're pretty lucky, really. Overseas, they reticulate up to 27 kilometres, and they've been doing it for a long time, and they're actually using power from the geothermal first, then using it for district heating in the time that they've advanced their technology from just district heating to now power as well.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tristan and Hannah, I take it you've had experience of living in a geothermal house at some stage.
Yes.
And what is the, if you've got free hot water and heating, what is the average cost of electricity per month?
We lived in a geothermal house in Holland Street for about 3 years, and we've got 4 kids, and honestly, our power bill was never higher than $90, sometimes about $70 throughout the summer months, but it just never ever went above $100. And currently we're paying about $330 a month with a heat pump. So yeah, and Ray Morrison, he said that in his home on Margarita Street that he sold recently, his power was never over $70, and he had a 70,000 litre swimming pool that was running off the system as well. And yeah, so yeah, big saving.
You, Councillor Gould, then Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your report this afternoon. I'm looking at the page where it's got method, and you said do a test hole to approximately 400 metres. Are there parts of Rotorua where you can't go down 400 metres? And you also said in the bottom of that report that you additional out each street approximately 1,250 homes per bore. would you expect the pipes to be quite large, and would you expect a maintenance charge for each of the homes hooked up to it?
I estimate that the pipeline itself would either be between 50mm pipe to 80mm pipe maximum, which is easily directional drilled over a long distance. And yes, I believe that there would be a rateable charge to each household that is on the system, which I think could become part of the bylaw for the air quality, is that you would be connected to the system. Basically, so the exclusion zone, which is 1.5 kilometre radius of the geyser, and then basically the western side of Ranulph Street, there isn't much activity out that way, but the field that we have is easily capable of reticulating all districts, all suburbs from the active areas.
Thank you, councillors. Is there anything you'd like to conclude your presentation? Oh, sorry, councillor Kent. Beg your pardon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your submission, which has made very interesting reading. My question is this. You've come up with a sort of individual consumers could sort of take part in this thing for sort of less than $5,000, but what sort of dollars are we talking for a production bore, and the cost to actually distribute between, say, 1,200 houses which are surrounding that bore? You must have done some figures on those.
I can give you figures for the drilling costs and the production bores. I honestly don't have enough experience in the reticulation side of it to give a true figure, but the products are affordable and the technology is there. Other countries around the world, they can spend up to $1 billion just drilling one well. They have to go to a depth of sometimes 5 kilometres, and they don't get what we get. They get about 83 degree water. We can drill to 150 metres and get 140 degrees steam. So at the moment, the cost of a typical production well is between $50,000 and $100,000 per well, and each site would have 3 wells, one being the reinjection, one being the production, and one being the backup bore in case the production failed, so that there's always steam.
So if I've done my quick maths, we're talking about probably $250,000 to do a production setup capable of powering 1,200 homes.
Possibly more homes, depending on the heat energy of the mass storage tank, because that will have its own heat exchanging qualities. So it would cause less draw from the bore as it has to refresh the water supply back to temperature. So it could be more than. That was an estimate, 1,200 homes, but it could be more depending on actual testing of a volume of water that size having its own heating exchanging qualities, if you know what I mean.
Thank you. And would there be limits to the distance, for example, that you could actually distribute the heated water that's actually doing the heating of the homes?
As far as I'm concerned with Rotorua, no, because if they can do it in Iceland, 27 kilometre radius, of multiple plants, then I think that we can easily achieve the same thing here with less than 10 plants.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much. Look, thank you both for coming along this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you very
for
much.
hearing
Thank you
us.
for your presentation. Thank you. Thank you. Kay Richards from the Fireman. Good afternoon, Kay. Thank you for coming along. You've got 10 minutes, Kay, so how you choose to use that is up to you. If you'd like to leave us some time at the end for questions, if you want to go over your presentation, over your submission, that's entirely up to you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, councillors and Mayor. I've worked in the wood burner industry now for about 6 or 7 years. I have dealt with the hot swap now for that length of time as well. And I feel being involved with the industry and knowing a bit about the background, and also being involved with the New Zealand Home Heating Association, they have been working really hard in the Christchurch and Canterbury areas to try and get the air emissions down. And one thing that they have actually been tackling is the education of their constituents, ensuring that people know what to burn in a fire and what not to burn in a fire. Because you can honestly make a clean air fire smoke more than an old 20-year-old fire by what you burn in it. So I think the council, or that everyone should be educating people more than trying to eliminate the wood burners, because by doing that you're going to cause other problems elsewhere, and that's going to be reflected in people's health because they can't afford to pay for high power bills, and the only place they can take money from really is going to be their food budget. And Rotorua has got a very low socio-economic people, and they struggle as it is without having to pay for high power bills and everything. So basically what would happen is, like other parts of New Zealand have done the same thing, gone down the same track, and they've either banned or really limited wood burner use, and they've found that yes, the air quality has improved, so some people do have a benefit of the cleaner air, but in reflection a lot more people suffer from respiratory problems from living in cold damp houses, and that then becomes a problem on the health. As wood merchants should have some sort of auditing. They have a good wood program in Canterbury where wood merchants can actually enlist and become responsible merchants, whereas they agree to being audited and have their wood moisture levels tested, and they get the benefit of being available or having their information available on a council website when people search for wood, and they can see that yes, this company is going to provide us with well dried seasoned wood, and we're not going to end up with wet wood, because the wet wood is one of the biggest things that's causing the pollution. Thank you.
Thank you. Kay, from your observation, do we do enough to inform people about making sure they've got, in terms of education and information going out to the community, do you feel we do enough about in that area so that people do know about burning dry wood, etc., and storing it well and that?
I don't think there is enough education to people. They could be doing community group education. There's all sorts of avenues you could be taking. But as I said, most of the wood comes from wood merchants, and people sometimes can't afford to buy their wood a year or two in advance to season it. And you go and try and buy dry wood in the middle of winter, it's pretty near impossible. Sometimes you'll end up with wood that is reasonable, but still not dry enough that would be to not cause the air emissions that it does.
Thank you. Councillor Kent?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having had sort of open wood-burning fires in several parts of the world, I've noticed that a great deal of the efficiency of a fireplace is actually down to the chimney design and the flue design more than anything else. I've lived in places where the fire has been extremely efficient and you never see any smoke no matter what you put on it. And I've seen some modern fireplaces that quite honestly you have trouble even keeping dry wood burning. So what is your view in terms of the impact of, say, chimney design in terms of emission output?
Well, I agree that the open fires is always going to give you less efficiency and always cause more pollution. There are still properties in Rotorua I see occasionally burning open fires, and I have actually rung the regional council about them. I don't know what's being done because I still see them every day. The design of the fires these days, there are a lot more better improvements than what you had 20 or 30 years ago. So they are increasing the efficiency and also reducing the emissions. But the one thing I will say is that the 0.5 gram emission rule, that is going to create another set of problems where people are going to end up having to have a larger fire because those are the fires that have the lower emissions. Therefore, their houses will get too hot too quick. Then they will damper their fires down. And that is where they'll cause more emissions because they'll run their fires on low a lot more. And by doing that, they also will block their chimney, which will then mean the fires will smoke even more because they can't burn efficiently. So I think if the council was going to do anything with the emission rule, it should be dropped to about 1, and that would allow smaller fires, which are more suitably sized for a house, to be installed, and the people would run them more efficiently, and they wouldn't dampen them down, creating the emissions.
Yes, Your Worship.
Thank you for being involved for so long in this, because it's quite a collaborative effort that we need if we make a difference. Do you want to give us an observation of what you think of the boundaries of the airshed are? Is it a sensible approach?
So what the boundaries are now,
Yes.
as in the actual physical airshed
Yeah.
boundary? Well, I actually don't think that the air pollution in New Zealand or in Rotorua is actually as bad as everyone's making it out to be. And I've researched and tried to find the facts to back up some of the statements that have been made, and I still to this date haven't been able to find out how Lowell Thurston came to say that Rotorua's got the second worst air quality in New Zealand, because all the information I come up with, Rotorua is about number 8 for the PM10 short-term exposure, and I think it's number 18 or something, I can't remember now, for the PM10 long-term exposure. So, I mean, I've been to Japan myself, and I've experienced over there, the minority of people who do have issues with the air, they wear a mask. So the majority of people don't have to suffer, basically. And I actually pointed this out to the regional council. You know, there's the majority of people that are suffering is very, very small compared to the people who have to change their way of life to be making their other people's life a little bit better.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tapsell.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Kay, for your very well thought out submission. I do really appreciate having your expertise on here and the research you have done. I just wanted to clarify, it's just your summarising paragraph in your submission about that the air was, if the air was left to its own devices, it would actually be better off. So I just want to clarify, are you suggesting that we increase awareness but actually do nothing further?
Increase awareness and educate people. The air quality in Rotorua, I've had comments from customers who have been around for like 40 years, and they said, you know, they can remember back when it was like just a massive haze, and they don't get anything like that these days. So you do get a couple of days where it's very still, and the smoke and everything hangs a little bit. But compared to, 40, 50 years ago, when the air quality was a lot worse, it has improved. I would probably estimate about 80% on what it was 40 or 50 years ago. And it is also increasing in improvement as time goes by.
Mr Thomas, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In earlier on, you were talking about the difference between dry wood and wet wood. If we were able to get the commercial firewood sellers to only be selling dry wood, do you think there is enough capacity to supply Rotorua commercially with dry wood? Or, it does take a long time to dry out, so they'd have to have quite large stockpiles, I imagine.
Yes,
do
that
you
is
think that's
correct.
popular?
It
Do
is.
you think it's possible or viable to do that?
Anything's possible, it just depends on how deep your pockets are. Basically, if someone wants to make a business out of it, they'll have to be prepared. And if their business at the moment is creating more of an air pollution problem, they should not be allowed to continue.
Thank you.
Final question, Ms Morrison.
Kia ora, thank you for your submission. It was great to see sort of the depth that you've given us and the detail. I had a similar question along the lines of the wood merchants and that point of sale, I suppose, intervention that you're sort of talking about. And you talked about Christchurch having a good wood accreditation. Is there anywhere else that you're aware of, either New Zealand or internationally, that does have some sort of requirement on wood merchants at the point of sale to, only be able to sell wood at a certain sort of moisture level?
I have heard that in Australia they had similar issues with air pollution, and they actually have legislation over there, whereas wood merchants have to be a member of a group, and they will be tested, etc., and could very well lose their licence if they have too many breaches.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Kay, for coming along this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr Craig Smith, please, is here. Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr Smith, welcome. And you have 10 minutes.
Yep.
And if you'd like to use all of that time to go over your submission or to allow questions, I'll leave that up to you, how you want to go proceed. Thank you.
Yeah, there's quite a few concerns I've got regarding the policies that you're looking at implementing. The one of the other, along with the what is economic value for Rotorua, when you look around at Rotorua is not a very affluent area on majority. We've got probably about 50% of Rotorua under $30,000 a year income, and yet with what you're going to implement, you're going to make it absolutely non-affordable for anybody to be able to afford it, because if they own their own home, they will not be able to put that on their mortgage, because if you're struggling with a mortgage, no mortgage company is going to accept you putting another, if you put the carbon emissions down, there's going to be fireplaces. They're not going to be $2,000 fireplaces to put in. They're going to cost you $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, and yet these people aren't going to get the loans, or if they get the loans, that it'll be on their mortgage, and they can't even afford to pay their mortgage as it is. So I don't believe what you're doing is any way good for Rotorua. What I do believe is the fact you've got pollution, and some of that pollution is old bits of green wood that they've got from the back section, and they're burning that rubbish in their back of their section, and I believe that is adding more to Rotorua's pollution than what fireplaces is as a general is.
Thank you. Your Worship?
Thank you for coming on a cold day,
No, that's all right. It is
away from
cold,
your
yes.
wood fire.
Yeah.
What do you propose is an affordable solution?
Well,
Because we're looking at that as well as trying to, improve the air quality.
in there, in your proposal, you're proposing that people have pellet fires or heat pumps, and I know a lot of people that and friends that have got heat pumps, but they also run at conjunction with their fire, and basically, if someone puts good wood in the fireplace and it's dry, there's very, very little smoke, if anything, and the heat, I know somebody that has got a wood pellet fire, and they've got a little wood burner, and they moved into this house, and they said to me, well, we're not going to use this little wood burner, and within a month later, they had to get the pellet fire serviced because it caught fire. Now, those pellet fires, if they break down, there's no such thing as just getting a chimney cleaner in there for $50 to clean the chimney. They are very expensive in parts, and quite often, if it has been badly damaged, they don't replace them, you have to put a new one in. And I know somebody else that had a wood pellet fire, and it wasn't sufficient to heat their property, so they got rid of it and put in a wood pellet fire. Surely a warm house, but then it's got to be affordable. Now, even the fireplaces that we've got available now are very efficient. And if you've got a well-insulated house, you're using very little firewood. Very little. In fact, my house is very warm, and I'd be lucky if I don't even go for an armful of wood a night. So, and somebody said to me, like, those pellet fires are $28 a bag. And yes, they drip feed into it, but you're using power as well as buying it, you're using power to run it. Yes, you can, I got on there submissions, I said to you, you can power cut, you can't run them. You can, but you've got to install gas so that they actually have a gas backup. It's another huge expense. My suggestion there is that there definitely does need to be more control from the council on really smoky fires, and to check it out to see if it is a fireplace that's really smoky or it's someone burning rubbish in the backyard. And so I propose that the council as sets up a system not to penalise people, but to regulate it, to regulate it on a not a big brother attitude, but to educate people in what they're doing. Someone who's burning rubbish in the backyard has to be educated in what they're doing. And so that's my proposal. I don't believe that putting the emissions down from 0.8 to 0.5 is only going to hurt little people. It's going to people that are renting houses, the landlords own it. All you're going to do is going to make it even harder for the people that are renting their houses, because they're just going to pass the cost on to the renters, and you're just going to make it harder and harder for the lower income people. And the fact is, it's going to put more stress onto the hospitals, the doctors, flus, pneumonia, and so the only really solution is really push for the insulation somehow, really push for because there's still a lot of houses out there that aren't properly insulated, and that I believe that is the real key issue, not the fact that putting it down from 0.8 to 0.5.
Thank you. Councillor Gould.
Chair. Thank you, Craig, for your submission this afternoon. On your written submission with number 3, you've got suggested design standard of 0.7. How did you get to 0.7? Was it through design work or through work experience, or? No,
well, it's 0.7 can be done through various ways. It can be done through the not only the double burning fireplace, but it can be sorted out by the length of flues you got, which makes difference to how the fire's running. And really, it's to get down to that point there, just 1 point below. It'd be simple as just a better seal around a door of some of these fire places, not necessarily, which doesn't add extra cost to the fireplaces. It just means that they are properly sealed and running properly.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Craig, for coming in this afternoon and speaking to your submission. Thank you very much.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you.
Leah Hansen. Thank you. Leah Hansen. Is Leah here? Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, Leah. Welcome. Thank you. And you do have 10 minutes. So
Am I talking to? Oh,
yes.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. There you are. You have 10 minutes. So
Oh, lovely. It's a little bit nerve-wracking, one person against all these councillors, but I'll...
no, thank you.
Oh,
We're all eager to hear,
Okay.
and we've got your submission, but we're eager to hear if you want to speak to it or highlight things, some points in it. Hopefully, you might leave a few minutes towards the end for questions, but I'll leave that up to you. Thank you. And if that's right, you've got your microphone on. Thank you.
Right. Okay.
You can move it closer to yourself if you like.
Probably better to ask, I'm more better on question and answer
Yes.
scenarios, but this further bylaw rules, how are they brought about? Is there a race are we losing the race against reducing particulate by 2020? Is that where it's coming from? Anyone answer that?
I think it's come through the reports that we've had on the air quality of Rotorua over a number of years, I might add, and the
Since
deterioration in that.
2005, yeah.
Yes, and the deterioration that we've seen and what we want to try to do to mitigate that.
Okay. I guess the thing that really concerns me is the affordability on home heating. I'm at the coalface, so I see a huge proportion of properties. I deal with a lot of heating. We sell all sorts of heating, from heat pumps through to wood fires, pellet and gas. The 0.5 rule is so wrong on so many different levels. The 0.5 rule, what that actually takes out is all the small low emission fires, and all those small low emission fires are affordable. You're also it also means by 0.5 that you're putting people into oversized appliances, so they're turned down more often. I'm no scientist, but surely that would create more emission. There's some really good slow emission fires, and it has been making an impact in Rotorua. I can remember not so many years ago there was over 25 exceedances. We don't hear about what the exceedances are. I guess you can go on a website and have a look, but the public needs to be engaged in how we're actually reducing particulate emission, because we have, as a community and we need to engage the community to make that better. Education, the other man that was here before said education. Now, I've been in front of the Ministry of Environment that says that's a waste of time, but it's the only way of being able to get to the root of the problem without making people suffer with cold houses. What happens with tenanted properties is that when there's an option of a heat pump that's interest-free over 10 years for their tenant, that's what they will go for, and they'll take out that fire that might be connected to a wetback. They might cook on that fire, and so the most vulnerable people in our community are suffering. And the low emission fires are doing a good job. Why cannot we stay on the low emission fires instead of saying one of the things that you're saying is that we can only have pellet fires for any houses that have no fires. We can only just have a pellet fire. That's crazy. It's crazy. You've got people that can have wood fuel that don't pay anything off it. You're getting them to spend between $6,000 and $7,000 for a pellet fire that a lot of the community are not going to be able to afford. And you've got an option of a slow emission or a small emission fire, low emission fire, that you can put in $3,500. Big difference in that. The other thing that I was confused about was that there was no mention of ultra low emission fires. So the Rotorua Council was saying that you can only have pellet fires if it's a new build or haven't got a fire, and the Regional Council are promoting ultra low emission fires. So you've got your Regional Council putting in or pushing that, and you've got your local council and not even talking about it. So where's the communication?
Hands going up. Yes, Councillor Hunt.
Thank you, Leah. I just, you touched a bit on the price differential. So you spoke about the 0.5 requiring a bigger fire. So what would the price difference between that and a smaller fire?
So basically, you've got very limited number of 0.5 fires. So if you've got, I don't know, there's probably 20% of the fires you can have that are low emission. So they can start out installed probably in that 4,500.
Okay. And you spoke about the fact that you sell a range of heating. What advice and recommendations do you give for servicing? Because I know I've got a heat pump in a nearly dead firebox. And I do know that heat pumps require their filters to be cleaned, at least annually, again for maximum. And I'm not sure even the ones that are being installed, what education, as you've said, that's gone out. And again, how often pellet fires and what is required, as well as a standard fire with a flue. So
Yeah.
what sort of information do you give, and how widely do you think that is understood in the community?
Well, it would be nice if heating appliances were sold by heating specialist shops, but unfortunately they're not. They're sold in department stores as well. So basically, when we go through a consultation process, we talk about the requirements of the heating, and that's people's lifestyle, people's availability of fuel, their budget. So that's how we kind of work around that. We work on the pros and cons of every heating, and the pros and cons of all heating. So, for instance, heat pumps, push a button. A lot of people like push buttons these days. So it's push a button, heat up an area quite quickly, but they're room heaters only. They don't heat whole houses. They also really should be aligned with insulation, and so a lot of them are not. And often heat pumps, if they're not through specialists, heating companies are undersized. And so there's sometimes a bad rap on heat pumps, and that's primarily because the person's got the wrong appliance size, and it's for the wrong situation. So when we are a supply and installation company, we go from the start to the finish, and we cover all servicing. So for instance, a heat pump actually doesn't require much servicing at all. If it's sulfur treated correctly, that heat pump probably doesn't need to be looked at for 3 years, to be honest. But we explain on how they have to clean the internal filters, so that's the most important thing. If we talk about a pellet fire, we don't force people to take out a service agreement, but we certainly recommend that pellet fire needs to be serviced on an annual basis, because it's got working machinery and it's got electronic equipment in it. Okay, so they are at the high end of heating. Gas fires are the same, at the high end of heating. There is a bit of a lean towards gas at the moment. That sometimes can be possible on the hot swap loan, because there's quite a big loan limit for that. But we don't have reticulated gas, so we've only got pockets of it around the place. And wood fires, well, yes, they should be swept annually. And when they're swept annually, you can check that they've got all their parts, and that's what makes them so efficient, is that they've got sacrificial parts in them. You check the seals and clean the chimney, and so forth. So, yeah, we offer from a start to finish experience.
And the cost of cleaning a wood fire and cleaning a pellet burner?
So a wood fire clean is $69, a pellet fire service is $125.
Then Councillor Gould.
Madam Chair, one quick question, Lee. In your written report, you got that the 0.5 gram rule is ruling out most of the smaller, low emission wood burners. What is the rate for the low emission wood burners? What do you consider the rate for those to be?
Well, some of them are 0.6, but to cover all ranges, under 1 gram would cover most of those.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thanks, Lee, for coming. And the magic bullet that we thought we would have by now was the ultra-low emissions burners that they're trialling in Christchurch. Have you heard any more about their efficacy?
I'll be honest, I actually haven't sold one, because I'm not happy to sell them. I'm waiting to hear the experiences of people that have them, and I have heard stories. I've heard stories from Christchurch, because they've been doing them for a lot longer. Yeah. The problem that I see and have heard from the ultra-low is that you cannot control the burn, so they burn very hot, and you have to operate the downdraft on them. So if you're saying education doesn't work with working your low emission fire, then how the hell is it going to work with an ultra low emission fire? Because if you work out and you open the door of those, you'll slow the burn down. And then if you open the door and you slow the burn down, you can't do the downdraft. And I would suspect you actually have more emission.
So if you've got a new home builder, what do you recommend for them to put into their homes?
I don't recommend what they get. I talk to them about what they are thinking. The thing is, it's about putting the right appliance to the right house. So a lot of people go, I've talked to such and such, or their neighbours, or their family, or whatever, and those things are rubbish, or this is what I need to have. And it's not about that. It's about the house, the person, the budget, where they get their fuel from. There's more to it than one thing. Yeah.
Thank you. And just a final question, Councillor Kent. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your submission, Lee. Can I just have an opinion from you as to the life expectancy comparison between, say, a pellet fire, a heat pump, particularly in Rotorua,
Yep.
and a low emission fire?
That is a good question. Since the clean air fires have come out, they were expected maybe not to have as much life expectancy as the double burning fires, but we're what are we, about 12 years down the track from 2005, and they're holding together. They have sacrificial parts in them, not just a steel box anymore, so they do need maintenance. But if they're looked after, they last really well. A heat pump, well, we've got heat pumps out there that are 17 years old. So often when we're replacing heat pumps, it's not sulfur treated properly, it's undersized, so it wears out, so to speak. Pellet fires, I can't really comment on that. I've kept away from them for a long time, and so I've just gone back into them because we had a bad experience where New Zealand companies manufactured them and then couldn't get the parts and went out of business, and it was an awful experience. So we've kept away from them. So we're really content about the ones that we're selling at the moment, but we're pretty new to that. So I can't really tell you what the life expectancy is of pellet fires. Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Lee, for coming along today and speaking to your submission. Thank you. It's been very helpful.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Too nerve-wracking.
Both of them. Okay. Thank you. Eric Gillen. This is submission number 24 and 25. I think you're speaking to two submissions. Is that right, Mr. Gillen? Oh, right. So, thank you very much. There must be a bit of an error on mine. So, submission number 24?
No, my name is Eric Gillen. I'm here to represent Bioenergy Association of New Zealand.
Oh, right. That's submission 25. Thank you very much. Thank you and good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
You have 10 minutes. And you can speak to your submission if you want to. We've got it here. Is this the one in front of us? That's right. And if you'd like to leave some time at the end for questions, be most welcome.
Good. Yeah.
Thank you.
Like Leanne, I'd prefer to do question and answer if you could. So. Yeah.
Thank you. So, councillors, your worship, we're on submission 25. The Bioenergy Association. That's correct, isn't it?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yep.
Ms. Morrison.
Hi, kia ora.
Hi, Harry. Good.
Thank you for your submission. I'm interested in the work that you're doing around the wood pellets, and you talked about, there's been no specified standards as yet, and that it sounds like your association's looking at developing technical guides. How far away are you from sort of confirming those, and are you working with kind of government or other sort of sector regulators on that?
Yeah, sure. I can't speak on pellet appliances. I think Lee spoke pretty well on those. Personally, I'm representing Bioenergy Association, but I do contract to one of the pellet manufacturers in New Zealand, and I was plant manager at the Taupo plant 2005 when it was built, and I project managed the Taupo plant that was being built, so I've had a fair bit of experience in pellets. There's probably two major pellet manufacturers in New Zealand today as we speak, and both of those are accredited to various standards. So the larger one is accredited to what's called DIN+, which is a European standard and is probably the most recognised international standard in New Zealand. The other one is licensed to 40414.6, which is the test standard for pellet fuel in New Zealand. So both those, or the major pellet manufacturers in New Zealand, are licensed, and on an international standard they do a pretty good job to our knowledge. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor.
Bioenergy Association of New Zealand is looking at an overarching umbrella of bringing all those manufacturing companies under ISO 1775, which also adopts DIN plus the international standards.
Thank you, Councillor Gould.
Much, Madam Chair. The submission states, wood pellet burners sold in New Zealand currently do not have to comply with any specific manufacturing standards. Do you think there should be a manufacturing standard for the pellet burners in New Zealand?
As I said on the previous question, I'm not that adverse or fay with pellet fires and the standards. All I know, and I agree with Leanne when she spoke, initially in New Zealand the pellet fires that were made here are of poor quality, poor standard. To my knowledge today, most of them are coming in from Europe or from North America or Canada, and they are licensed to their standards, whatever they do there. But I do agree that probably in time, and Bioenergy Association supports that there is an overarching standard for the installation of pellet fires in New Zealand. Yeah.
Thank you. Mrs. Trumper, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've just got a question. You've got, and I happen to take particular note, that you believe that we've set, well, I should say the policy is being set at quite a low emission rate of 0.5, and you say that it's stricter than New Zealand's current standard under solid wood burners.
I guess
in New Zealand it's 1.5, so where do you see it being efficient and meeting the requirements of air quality?
Okay, to answer the question in two parts, we think the 0.05 is rather low, and in fact it's lower than the NSEC, the QA, the overriding national standard. As to what it should be, hard to say. I mean, at the end of the day, the previous speakers, solid firewood, the quality of it or the moisture content is imperative for the successful running of fire. So whether that's 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, we don't know. But I guess what we're pointing out is that we think that what you're trying to set here at 0.5 is a tad low, and in some cases will be unaffordable for many people, because the luxury of a pellet fire is great, so is a gas fire, and so is a low emission fire, but they do come at a cost.
Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your submission. Is there anything currently to stop someone importing substandard pellets or pellets contaminated with other things?
No, very good question, and I've been involved with it since 2005, and we've seen a number of imported pellets come in at the time, mainly through the supermarket chains, and ex-Vietnam, China, places like that, very poor quality. I guess the watchdog is that the market pretty well weeds that out quickly. So I know in one case, when I was involved in the South Island in 2008, one of the big supermarkets brought pellets in that were made of rice husks and green matter and stuff like that. And where a licensed pellet from the major pellet manufacturers in New Zealand will give you a guaranteed burn time, or they'll have a, within their standard, they'll have a burn time there. These pellets were burnt in half the time. So the public pretty well reacted to that pretty strongly. But right here and here today, no, there's nothing to stop anyone bringing in a pellet that is not to either an international standard or the current New Zealand test standard 4014.6.
So if there is nothing to stop or to maintain the quality of the pellets, then there is absolutely no point whatsoever in forcing people to put in a pellet fire with an objective to meeting a standard, is there?
I disagree. I think that the pellets that are made in New Zealand are very, very good quality. I don't see anybody, and we're watching it all the time, Russia, Lithuania, some of those countries looking to export. At the moment, the demand for pellets in Europe is such, I don't think anyone's looking to push them in. And most of the people that stock and sell pellets would not sell pellets that weren't accredited to the main standards here in New Zealand anyway. If I was a independent heating store and I was offered pellets that weren't certified, I wouldn't touch them. So I think there'd be a natural barrier to bring them in. I really do.
Thank you. And the final question, Your Worship.
Regards to Brian Cox and
Yes.
his your association.
Yes.
There's two interesting points in your whole submission to me, other than the expertise that the association clearly has. Are you involved in the geothermal working party that we have jointly with the regional council as an association, as one question?
Yep.
And then your enthusiasm to work with councils on clusters of heat users to create district heating schemes from bioenergy or geothermal. Has that expertise been invited into either of our councils?
I'm not involved in that side of it, in the geothermal side, to say that geothermal energy is going to be used in the manufacture of wood pellets as the energy source in Taupo. I know a couple of years ago, and I can't remember a name, and I don't see her sitting around the table, but we did actually have one of your councillors come to one of the large pellet plants in New Zealand.
Janet Webber.
That was her.
Yep.
That was her. Yeah, you've got it. Yeah. So there has been some involvement there to come and have a look. But I know on the other side of it that Brian is certainly involved with cluster schemes or district heating schemes. Yeah.
And that's where we ought to be exploring other options that we can look at that impact on air quality.
Exactly. Yep.
And you've got the expertise in the association.
Within the association, yeah, I'm more on the wood fibre side, but there's plenty of expertise in the
geothermal's there too.
Yep.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gillen, for coming along today. Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you so much. Claire Pride. This is submission number 27, councillors. Thank you very much, Mr. Gillen. Good afternoon, Claire.
Good afternoon.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. My husband and I are firewood merchants in Rotorua. And you're probably all thinking, of course, I'm going to defend wood burners. But we don't just sell firewood to households within the airshed. We sell to lots of homes that are not in the airshed. I assume you've all read my submission, so I don't just want to repeat that, but I do want to reiterate my point that I believe taking a heavy-handed approach and clamping down on wood burners is not the right approach. I feel that the Lakes Council and the Regional Council should be doing more to educate people in the use of their wood burners. And I'm pleased to hear it seems to be a common theme with the submitters this afternoon, that education seems to be one of the main words that come up. Key to a good clean fire is burning dry firewood. The key to dry firewood is getting it into your woodshed early. We are continually telling our customers that the only way to be 100% sure of having dry firewood for winter is to source it early, which means summer, better still in spring, and dry it themselves. We sell our firewood cheaper in summer to encourage people to source their firewood early, and in fact February and March are our two busiest months of the year. But there's still lots of people ringing now, obviously wanting to buy dry firewood. People need educating that waiting until winter arrives and assuming that firewood merchants will have great piles of dry firewood just waiting for them is naive, in my opinion. I would like nothing more than to be able to say we have dry firewood for sale all year round, but it really is not that simple. And I feel like we are a lone voice trying to educate people to get their firewood in early. Running a radio campaign in March, as happened 2 or 3 years ago, is ludicrous, in my opinion. March is not early to be getting in firewood. If the Regional Council and the Lakes Council is serious about improving air quality in Rotorua, then they need to get serious about educating people to get their wood in early and dry it themselves. The Regional Council has some really good stuff on their website, but who goes looking at that? They ran a competition at the end of last year. Take a photo of your firewood stack and win some firewood. It was a great prize, a lot of firewood, but I felt the execution of the competition was weak. We got a flyer in our letterbox just before Christmas, which was great, but I didn't see any follow-up to it. Maybe I missed it. I do know the time frame had to be extended because there was a poor response to it, and in the end we were asked to supply the winning firewood in May, which is hardly an ideal example to be setting to householders. And again, maybe I missed it, but was there any follow-up in the paper showing the winning stack of firewood? This is obviously regional council, not the Lakes Council, but and running a campaign that makes the firewood merchants the bad guys, as happened a few years ago, is just ignorance in my opinion. I feel that if it's a half-hearted, that it's just easier to ban wood fires, is the impression that I get. And to reiterate my point in my submission, there is nothing that puts out heat like a wood burner. New Zealand homes are historically badly designed for our winter conditions, and heat pumps and pellet fires just don't put out the same amount of heat that a wood burner does. As an aside, I also think it's a crying shame that there is hundreds of tonnes of wood left behind in the forests after the harvesters have been through that is just left there to rot, because our mollycoddling health and safety rules these days prevent people from going and getting their own firewood. I had two separate customers from Kaingaroa just last week needing to buy firewood. They're surrounded by wood out there, but they're not allowed to go and take it, and it's just left to rot in the forest. It's crazy. I also have some concerns about the pellet fires. It was interesting to listen to the previous speaker. My experience of pellet fires is that they're noisy, although I do believe the newer ones are not so noisy. My concern really is more for the pellets. I believe there are only two manufacturers of the pellets, which must be cause for concern in terms of pricing and whether there is sufficient competition. I was also intrigued to see on a pellet fire website just last week, the website, they were asking, saying that the quality of the pellets from one of the manufacturers were not up to standard, and asking people to return their pellets and they would replace them with pellets from the other manufacturer, which has to be cause for concern. If they're not being made to specification, then, you know, are they not causing problems of their own? Again, as I said in my submission, our wood burner at home puts out up to 23 kilowatts of heat. The temperature in our lounge is always between 22 and 25 degrees every night. It heats our water, and I can cook on it if I choose. You won't get that from a heat pump or a pellet fire. Firewood is sustainable and renewable. It was interesting, as I was walking out the door this afternoon, I had a call from a homeowner just sounding out the price of firewood. She has a pellet fire and a heat pump, but she's wanting to put in a wood burner because she's not getting the heat that she wants from the heat pump, and her pellet fire is causing her problems. She's had to have it repaired numerous times, and she's looking at putting in a wood burner. I told her she needed to get on with it fast before she wasn't allowed to anymore. So at risk of repeating myself, I believe the Regional Council and the Lakes Council should be doing more to educate people to source their firewood early and dry it themselves so they can be confident of having good dry firewood wood come winter that will burn cleanly and warm their homes efficiently. Thank you.
You're very much clear. There may be a few questions from councillors. Councillor Gould.
Yeah. Thank you, Claire, for your report this afternoon.
Be kind to me.
At the beginning of your comments, you should be allowed to install low emulsion wood burners. Do you know what the rating for those are? When you say low, do you want, because at the moment the rule's 0.5.
Oh, don't get on the technical stuff with me. Well, sorry, say that again?
Your comments state at front, should be allowed to install low emulsion wood burners.
Yes.
And the rule at the moment is 0.5. Do you know what
Well,
those
no, I mean wood burners. People should be allowed to install wood burners. And the compliant wood burners, I mean, our wood burner at home is a compliant wood burner. It's what we were allowed to put in. And it's a fantastic fire.
Do you know what the rating of those?
What the emissions it puts out, our particular fire. I don't know the emissions that our particular fire puts out, but I know our house is only 6 years old, so it's a wood burner installed by Leanne, so I know it complies with the regulations. and I know it puts out astonishing amount of heat.
Thank you. Mr Thomas?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just interested to ask a couple of questions since you're a supplier of firewood, and we had someone earlier on suggesting that we could instigate a program of getting suppliers to be supplying dry wood all year round. I got the impression from what you said that you most probably run out of dry wood at some point. Is that
Yes.
is that fair?
Yes.
So, how much do you think you would be needing to expand or invest in your business to be able to have dry wood all year? Or is that really an impossibility, do you think? Do you, you're talking about education and getting people to dry their own wood. Do you think you just wouldn't really have the space and the access to dry it for long enough?
We could throw, my husband's always thinking through options and scenarios for how we can do things bigger and better, but that all comes at cost. And, it then becomes, people are only prepared to pay so much for their wood. So any development that we put in to make things bigger, better, drier, is going to add to the cost of the wood. And there's quite people can't resent buying wood in Rotorua because they are still used to the days when they could go out, when they were allowed to go out to the forest and get all that wood that's just lying out there rotting. And they really resent having to pay for their firewood now. We have a lot of customers that are very loyal customers and come to us because they like us. But there's also a lot of people that are very price dependent and only buy on price. And as I said, I think making the merchants responsible, I think, is naive. It's like baking a cake. If you're baking a cake that's 20 centimetres by 40 millimetres, 20 millimetres by 4 millimetres, you put it in the oven for 50 minutes and it comes out and it's done. But if you're doing a wedding cake that's like this, it takes 5 or 6 hours or overnight, and firewood's the same. We are one of the bigger merchants in town, and we do about 2,500 cubic metres of wood a year. It's a huge volume of wood. It's enormous. And it's just not that easy to have dry firewood all year round at a cost that people can afford. And if most people get through a minimum of 5 cubic metres, I would suggest. Plenty of people get through 8 or 9 cubic metres. It is much, much easier to dry 5, 8 cubic metres of wood at home in your shed than it is for us to dry 2,500, 3,000 cubic metres of wood.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your very, very full reply there. And I guess one thing I take out of it, I think you hit the nail on the head. Whatever we do to improve air quality is going to cost money.
Yes.
And whether it's people having to put in more expensive appliances or whether they're having to spend more on firewood, I think that's what we're up against here. Thank you very much.
It's just a matter of getting their firewood in early so that they know that they've got dry wood, rather than, I don't know when the mentality came about that people assumed that merchants would have dry wood waiting for them. It's not that many years ago that the only source of heating in a New Zealand home was an open fire in the lounge and maybe one in the kitchen. And people knew that they had to get their firewood in as soon as winter ended, and they got their wood in and they had it drying, and by the time next winter came around, they had dry wood. Why do people suddenly expect that, oh, it's cold, my phone has been going crazy today? Why do it's wood we're talking about. It doesn't just dry like that.
Thank you. I think part of the reason, Claire, is why they don't is the fact that, when winter's over, people are looking forward to the summer, then up comes Christmas, then it's holiday time, and then it's back to school time, and those are all costly times of the year.
So they need educating.
And it's more than that. They actually need to have the disposable $400 or $500 or $600 available to them.
And again, I tell people, the ideal for me would be someone that orders 10 cubic metres and we split it straight into the truck and we go and deliver it and we get their money and we go on. That would be perfect. But I realise that's not possible for everyone. And I say to people, start buying your wood in October. Buy 2 cubic metres a month. If you start in October, it'll cost $140, maybe up to $180 for 2 cubic metres. October, November, December, January, February. That's 10 cubic metres of wood in your shed by the end of February at $180 a month.
Yes. Councillor Tapsell. Oh, were you wanting something? Sorry.
Sorry, I was just being mindful of time. Thank you,
Yes,
Claire, for your presentation and sharing your experience. I was quite interested in what you, your main point, well, one of your main points of educating people, and I did just have to check how much we do in terms of awareness compared to the Bay of Plenty Regional Council, but you did criticise that radio wasn't enough, and I just wanted to know what your suggestion would be on other ways to educate the public.
I didn't say radio wasn't enough. I said the timing is crucial. Starting a campaign in March to get your wood in early is too late. Yeah, it needs to. And I know it's tricky because before Christmas people are thinking about Christmas, but I just think that you have to start then because that's when they need to be starting to get their wood in, and it needs to be a blanket approach, just not a little bit here and there. If you're serious about getting the improving the air quality, then you've got to spend that money, in my opinion, and start early and keep hammering away at people. It's like educating people about drink driving and smoking and all those things. You just have to keep at it.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Claire, for coming along this afternoon.
Thank you.
I think there was one other, Andrew Wilson, not here. Thank you. Well, there you are. Thank you very much. We've concluded our hearings of the submissions on the air quality bylaw review. Oh, one more resolution. Sorry, just a moment, please. Page 4. Sorry. Oh, page 5. No. It's just the one to receive. So that we moved and we've received that. Thank you. No, I think that was it. We've concluded this. Thank you. We've concluded our hearings for the air quality review, bylaw review. So thank you very much, councillors. And as you know, that there is a full report coming later when we'll be deliberating on what we've read and what we've heard today. Thank you very much. May I have a move in a second? Do we move and second that out? No. Thank you very much. Thank you. Good afternoon.